America stands at a crossroads, and its fate hangs in the balance. These aren't the words of a politician or a pundit. They're the warning of a child who briefly left this world and returned with a message that could change everything. What he saw on the other side is both awe-inspiring and terrifying. It's a vision of America's future that will shake you to your core and leave you questioning the very nature of reality. The sun had barely peeked over the horizon when 12-year-old Michael Johnson's alarm clock jolted him awake. It was a Saturday in late spring, and the air hummed with the promise of adventure. Michael stretched, his mind already racing with plans for the day ahead. He had no idea that by nightfall his world would be forever changed. Downstairs, the familiar scent of pancakes wafted through the air. Michael's mother, Sarah, stood at the stove, flipping golden circles onto a growing stack. His father, James, sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and scrolling through his phone. It was a scene of perfect normalcy, a snapshot of countless mornings that had come before. "Morning, champ," James said, looking up as Michael bounded into the kitchen. "Big plans today." Michael nodded enthusiastically, his mouth already full of syrupy goodness. "Jake and I are going to explore the new bike trail in Willow Creek Park," he managed between bites. "We heard there's an awesome jump near the old oak tree." Sarah turned from the stove, a slight frown creasing her brow. "Just be careful, okay? No crazy stunts." Little did she know her maternal instinct was sensing a danger she couldn't possibly foresee. As the morning wore on, Michael met up with his best friend Jake. The two boys pedaled through the neighborhood, their laughter echoing off the houses as they raced toward the park. The new trail twisted through the woods, dappled sunlight playing across their path. They found the jump exactly where they'd heard it would be. A crude ramp of packed dirt rose before them, the ancient oak tree looming behind it like a silent sentinel. Jake went first, sailing over the jump with a whoop of triumph. Michael felt a surge of excitement mixed with a twinge of nervousness. "Come on, Mike, it's awesome!" Jake called from the other side. Michael took a deep breath, backed up for a running start, and began to pedal furiously. As he hit the ramp, time seemed to slow. He felt the bike leave the ground, the wind rushing past his face. For a moment he was flying, then in a heartbeat everything went wrong. The world tilted sideways, and Michael felt a sickening lurch as his bike twisted beneath him. There was a sharp crack as his helmet struck something hard, and then darkness. Jake's panicked shouts echoed through the woods as he fumbled for his phone with shaking hands. Within minutes, the peaceful park was shattered by the wail of approaching sirens. At home, the shrill ring of the telephone cut through the quiet afternoon. Sarah answered, her face draining of color as she listened. James was already grabbing car keys, a cold dread settling in his stomach as they raced to the hospital. In the emergency room, doctors worked feverishly over Michael's still form. Words like severe head trauma and internal bleeding hung in the air like a toxic fog. Sarah and James clung to each other, their world narrowing to the steady beep of the heart monitor. Then, without warning, the beep became a single, unbroken tone. The line on the monitor went flat. A doctor called out for the defibrillator. But in that moment, in the space between heartbeats, Michael Johnson slipped away. As the medical team continued their desperate efforts, a profound silence seemed to descend upon the room. It was as if the very fabric of reality held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. No one could have imagined the journey that Michael's spirit was about to embark upon, a journey that would bring him face to face with a truth that would shake the foundations of a nation. As the line between life and death blurred, Michael found himself in a realm beyond imagination. What he encountered there would not only change him forever, but also carry a message that could alter the course of an entire nation. What did Michael see in those moments between life and death? At first, Michael felt a profound sense of disorientation. He was aware of his surroundings, yet somehow detached from them. The sterile hospital room, with its beeping machines and frantic medical staff, seemed to fade into the background. Michael realized with a start that he could see his own body lying motionless on the bed below. A wave of confusion washed over him, followed closely by a spike of fear. How was this possible? Before he could process this bizarre situation, Michael's attention was drawn to a sight that defied explanation. A tunnel of brilliant, warm light appeared before him, stretching into infinity. The light wasn't harsh or blinding. Instead, it emanated a sense of welcome and comfort. Despite his initial trepidation, Michael felt an inexplicable pull toward this radiant pathway. As he moved closer to the tunnel, something extraordinary happened. The fear and confusion that had gripped him moments ago melted away, replaced by an overwhelming sense of peace and love. It was as if every positive emotion he had ever experienced was concentrated and amplified 1,000-fold. Michael felt embraced by a presence that was at once familiar and awe-inspiring. Suddenly, he wasn't alone. Ethereal figures began to materialize around him, their forms shimmering with a soft, otherworldly glow. With a jolt of recognition, Michael realized he was looking at his grandmother, who had passed away when he was just a toddler. Her smile was exactly as he remembered from old family photos, but now it radiated with a warmth and love that seemed to transcend physical limitations. It was in this moment that the full weight of his situation hit Michael. He was no longer in the physical world he had known all his life. This realization, rather than terrifying him, filled him with an intense curiosity. Questions flooded his mind. What was this place? Why was he here? What secrets did this realm hold? As if in response to his unspoken queries, Michael felt a subtle shift in the energy around him. The light seemed to pulse with purpose, and he sensed that his presence here was not random chance. A growing awareness settled over him. He had been brought to this place for a reason. There was something he needed to learn, something of great importance that he would be tasked with sharing. This newfound sense of purpose filled Michael with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. He was just a 12-year-old boy from a small town. How could he possibly be entrusted with a message of such magnitude? Yet, as he stood on the threshold of this heavenly realm, Michael felt a strength and resolve he had never known before. Whatever lay ahead, he knew that his journey was only beginning, and that the revelations to come would change not just his life, but potentially the fate of millions. Just as Michael grappled with the weight of his newfound purpose, a presence unlike any he had encountered materialized before him. This wasn't just another ethereal figure. It radiated an authority that seemed to bend the very fabric of this otherworldly realm. The being's form was difficult to comprehend, a swirling vortex of light and energy that simultaneously dazzled and soothed Michael's senses. As the radiant entity drew closer, Michael felt a profound sense of reverence wash over him. It was as if he stood in the presence of something truly divine, a messenger from beyond the veil of human understanding. The air around them seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly energy, and Michael found himself struggling to maintain his composure in the face of such overwhelming power and grace. The being's voice, when it spoke, was unlike anything Michael had ever heard. It resonated not just in his ears, but in the very core of his being. "Michael," it intoned, its words carrying the weight of cosmic significance, "you have been chosen for a task of utmost importance. The fate of your nation, and perhaps the world, hangs in the balance." Michael's mind reeled at these words. How could he, a 12-year-old boy from a small town, possibly be entrusted with such a monumental responsibility? As if sensing his doubt, the messenger's light pulsed with reassurance. "You were chosen, not for your strength or wisdom, but for your purity of heart and your capacity to believe. The message you will carry back to the world of the living requires a vessel untainted by cynicism and doubt. The gravity of the situation began to settle upon Michael like a heavy cloak. He realized that his journey to this realm was no accident, but part of a greater design. The messenger continued, its words painting a picture of a world at a crossroads, teetering on the edge of monumental change. "What I am about to reveal to you," it said, "will challenge everything you thought you knew about your country and its future. Are you prepared to bear this burden?" Michael felt a surge of determination rise within him. Despite his youth and inexperience, he knew that he had been called to this moment for a reason. He nodded, his resolve strengthening with each passing second. The messenger's light seemed to brighten in response, as if pleased by Michael's courage. "Listen carefully," the being instructed, its voice taking on a tone of urgency. "The prophecy I'm about to share has been guarded for millennia, waiting for the right moment and the right messenger to bring it into the light." As the divine messenger prepared to speak, Michael felt the weight of countless generations pressing upon him. He stood at the threshold of a revelation that would shake the foundations of his world. The air around them crackled with anticipation, and Michael braced himself for the words that would forever change the course of his life and potentially the fate of America itself. The messenger's words hung in the air, pregnant with cosmic significance. What if the fate of an entire nation could be altered by the understanding of a single child? As the being began to speak, Michael realized he was about to learn a truth that would challenge everything he thought he knew about his country's destiny. "America stands at a critical juncture," the messenger intoned, its voice resonating with otherworldly authority. "The choices made in the coming years will determine whether your nation rises to new heights of greatness or falls into darkness." Michael listened, transfixed, as the messenger revealed a series of vivid visions. He saw bustling cities transformed into ghost towns, their streets empty and buildings crumbling. In another flash, he witnessed throngs of people marching together, their faces alight with hope and determination. The contrast was stark, and Michael struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what he was being shown. The messenger continued, explaining how the spiritual and earthly realms were inextricably linked. "The actions of individuals ripple through both worlds," it said. "Every choice, every decision sends waves of energy that shape the future." As the prophecy unfolded, Michael saw glimpses of potential futures. In one, America led the world in scientific breakthroughs and environmental stewardship. In another, the nation was torn apart by division and strife. The weight of this knowledge pressed upon Michael, and he felt both awed and overwhelmed by the responsibility of carrying this message. "Time grows short," the messenger warned, its light pulsing with urgency. "The window for change is narrowing. You must return and share what you have seen." Michael's mind reeled. How could he, a young boy, convey the gravity of this prophecy to a world that might not be ready to listen? The messenger, sensing his doubt, offered a reassuring pulse of energy. "You were chosen for this task because your heart is pure and your spirit is strong," it said. "The path ahead will not be easy, but you will not walk it alone." As the full implications of the prophecy became clear, Michael realized that the lives of millions hung in the balance. The choices made by his fellow Americans would ripple outward, affecting not just their nation, but the entire world. The messenger's final words echoed in Michael's consciousness. "Remember, the future is not set in stone. It is shaped by the collective will and actions of humanity. You carry the seed of hope. Plant it wisely, nurture it carefully, and watch as it grows to change the course of history." With these words, the vision began to fade. Michael felt himself being pulled back towards the physical world, his mind brimming with the profound revelations he had witnessed. He knew that his life would never be the same, and that the real challenge was only just beginning. What if you were given a glimpse of paradise, only to be told you had to leave it behind? For Michael, this wasn't just a hypothetical scenario, it was the most important decision he would ever face. And the fate of a nation hung in the balance. As the prophetic vision faded, Michael found himself suspended between two worlds. The ethereal realm that surrounded him pulsed with an indescribable peace and love. It was a stark contrast to the chaotic, often painful world he had left behind. Here, in this place of pure light and warmth, Michael felt a sense of belonging he had never experienced before. The weight of earthly concerns seemed to dissolve, replaced by a profound understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. Yet even as he basked in this heavenly embrace, Michael felt the tug of his earthly life. The messenger's words echoed in his mind, reminding him of the crucial task that awaited him if he chose to return. The responsibility was immense, carrying a divine warning that could alter the course of America's future. Michael's young mind grappled with the magnitude of this burden. How could he, a mere child, be expected to convey such a monumental message? Fear and doubt crept into Michael's thoughts. What if no one believed him? What if he failed in his mission? The comfort of remaining in this spiritual realm was tempting, offering an escape from the challenges that lay ahead. But as these doubts swirled, Michael felt a gentle presence, the divine messenger, offering guidance once more. "The choice is yours, Michael." The being's voice resonated within him. "Free will is a sacred gift, and even now, you must exercise it. Remember, the greatest acts of courage are born from the deepest wells of fear." These words stirred something within Michael. He began to see his experience not just as a burden, but as a profound gift. This journey had opened his eyes to the delicate balance between the spiritual and physical worlds, and the power of individual choices to shape collective destiny. He realized that his life had a purpose far greater than he had ever imagined. As Michael contemplated his decision, he felt a growing sense of clarity. The peace of the afterlife was alluring, but the potential to make a difference, to potentially save millions of lives, called to him with an even stronger pull. He understood now that true fulfillment came not from escaping life's challenges, but from facing them with courage and purpose. In that moment of profound understanding, Michael made his choice. With a mixture of trepidation and determination, he embraced his mission. As he did so, he felt the ethereal realm begin to fade around him, the physical world rushing back into focus. Michael knew that the journey ahead would be difficult, but he was ready to face it, armed with the knowledge and purpose he had gained beyond the veil. As the ethereal realm faded, Michael braced himself for what came next. But nothing could have prepared him for the sheer agony of returning to his physical form. What happens when a soul that's touched heaven tries to re-enter a broken body? The journey back was unlike anything Michael had ever experienced. It felt as if every atom of his being was being compressed, squeezed through an impossibly narrow tunnel. The peace and love of the spiritual realm gave way to a searing pain that engulfed his entire consciousness. Michael's spirit fought against the confines of his physical form, struggling to reconcile the vastness of what he had experienced with the limitations of his earthly body. Suddenly, Michael gasped, his eyes flying open as he lurched back into consciousness. The harsh, fluorescent lights of the hospital room assaulted his senses, a stark contrast to the gentle radiance of the otherworldly realm he had just left. The steady beep of the heart monitor, once flat, now pulsed with renewed life. The medical team, who had been moments away from pronouncing him dead, stared in stunned silence at the miracle unfolding before them. As Michael's awareness slowly returned, he found himself overwhelmed by sensory input. Every sound seemed amplified, every touch electric. The sterile smell of the hospital, The cool air on his skin, the taste of antiseptic in his mouth. It all hit him with an intensity he had never known before. His near-death experience had heightened his perception of the physical world, making him acutely aware of the preciousness of each moment. Struggling to find his voice, Michael tried to communicate the profound truths he had learned, but the words felt inadequate, unable to capture the magnitude of his experience. How could he possibly explain the divine messenger, the prophecy, the weight of the responsibility now resting on his young shoulders? His frustration mounted as he realized the enormity of the task ahead. The door to his room burst open, and Michael's parents rushed in, their faces a mixture of disbelief, joy, and concern. Tears streamed down his mother's face as she embraced him, her body shaking with sobs of relief. His father stood at the bedside, gripping Michael's hand tightly, as if afraid to let go. The emotional intensity of the reunion was almost too much for Michael to bear, his newly sensitized spirit feeling every nuance of their love and fear. As the initial shock of his revival began to subside, Michael found himself grappling with a changed perspective on life. The world around him seemed both more vivid and more fragile than before. He understood now with crystal clarity the interconnectedness of all things and the profound impact of every choice. The prophecy he had been entrusted with weighed heavily on his mind, a constant reminder of the urgent message he needed to share. Looking into the tear-filled eyes of his parents, Michael realized that his journey was far from over. In fact, the most challenging part was just beginning. How could he convey the gravity of what he had learned? How would he convince others of the critical crossroads America faced? As these questions swirled in his mind, Michael steeled himself for the difficult path ahead, knowing that the fate of a nation might depend on his ability to share the divine warning he had received. The line between prophet and madman is often razor-thin in the eyes of others. Michael was about to discover just how difficult it can be to stand on the right side of that line. What happens when the bearer of a world-changing message is dismissed as delusional? As Michael regained his strength in the hospital, he felt an overwhelming urgency to share what he had experienced. The vivid memories of his journey beyond the veil and the weighty prophecy entrusted to him burned in his mind. However, his first attempts to convey the gravity of his vision were met with confused looks and nervous laughter. The doctors attributed his fantastical story to the trauma of his near-death experience. They spoke in hushed tones about possible brain damage or post-traumatic stress. Michael's parents, though overjoyed at his miraculous recovery, exchanged worried glances when he spoke of divine messengers and America's destiny. "Honey, you've been through a lot," his mother would say, patting his hand gently. "Your mind is just trying to make sense of it all." Michael's frustration grew with each dismissal. He knew what he had seen and felt. The urgency of his message clashed with the disbelief that surrounded him. As days passed, he began to notice the sidelong glances from nurses and the way conversations would hush when he entered a room. The fear of being labeled as crazy or attention-seeking began to gnaw at him. One night, unable to sleep, Michael overheard his parents talking in low voices outside his room. "Maybe we should consider therapy," his father suggested. "This fixation on his vision isn't healthy." The weight of his divine mission pressed heavily on Michael's young shoulders. He grappled with an impossible choice: continue to speak out and risk being dismissed as unstable, or stay silent and betray the trust placed in him by the messenger. The internal conflict was agonizing. As Michael's discharge date approached, he felt increasingly isolated. His friends visited less frequently, put off by his intense focus on his spiritual experience. Even Jake, who had been by his side during the accident, seemed uncomfortable around him now. Just when Michael was on the brink of giving up, an unexpected ally emerged. Dr. Sarah Thompson, a neurologist brought in to assess Michael's cognitive function, listened to his story with rapt attention. Unlike the others, she didn't dismiss his experience outright. "Michael," she said, leaning in close, "I've heard similar accounts from other patients who've had near-death experiences. There's still so much we don't understand about consciousness and what happens when we're on the brink of death." For the first time since his return, Michael felt a glimmer of hope. Here was someone who didn't think he was crazy, someone who might help him fulfill his mission. As he looked into Dr. Thompson's understanding eyes, Michael realized that his journey to share the prophecy was only just beginning. The road ahead would be challenging, but he was no longer alone in his belief. Dr. Thompson's interest was just the beginning. What if Michael's experience could be scientifically validated? A world-renowned researcher was about to put Michael's incredible story to the test, and the results would shock even the most skeptical minds. Word of Michael's extraordinary near-death experience spread through medical circles, eventually reaching Dr. Elizabeth Hartley, a leading expert in the field of consciousness studies. Intrigued by the unique elements of Michael's account, Dr. Hartley arranged to meet with the young boy and his family. The interview process was extensive and meticulous. Over several days, Dr. Hartley questioned Michael about every aspect of his experience, from the moment of his accident to his return to consciousness. She was struck by the consistency and detail of his responses, noting that many elements aligned with other well-documented near-death experiences. What set Michael's case apart, however, were the specific details he provided about the divine messenger and the prophecy concerning America's future. Dr. Hartley found herself captivated by the depth and complexity of Michael's vision, far beyond what she would expect from a typical 12-year-old imagination. As part of her investigation, Dr. Hartley pored over Michael's medical records. She consulted with the doctors who had treated him, seeking any physiological explanation for his experience. The records confirmed that Michael had indeed been clinically dead for several minutes before his miraculous revival. Brain scans showed no signs of damage that could account for his vivid recollections. In a surprising turn of events, Dr. Hartley's research team uncovered several other near-death experiences who reported encounters with similar divine messengers. These individuals, from diverse backgrounds and locations, described strikingly similar beings of light who imparted warnings about humanity's future. The parallels between their accounts and Michael's were undeniable, lending credence to the authenticity of his experience. After months of rigorous analysis, Dr. Hartley presented her findings to a panel of her peers. She concluded that while science couldn't definitively prove the reality of Michael's spiritual journey, the evidence strongly suggested that his experience was far more than a simple hallucination or dream. Michael's case challenges our understanding of consciousness and the nature of reality itself, Dr. Hartley stated in her report. The consistency of his account, the corroboration from other experiences, and the lack of any medical explanation for his vivid recollections all point to something beyond our current scientific understanding. For Michael, Dr. Hartley's validation was a turning point. The weight of scientific scrutiny had not diminished his story, but had instead reinforced its authenticity. As he listened to Dr. Hartley present her findings, Michael felt a surge of confidence. The doubt that had plagued him since his return began to dissipate, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. With each passing day, Michael grew more certain of the reality of his experience and the importance of the message he carried. The journey ahead would still be challenging, but now he had the backing of respected researchers to support his incredible claim. The prophecy about America's future was no longer just a personal vision. It had become a matter of scientific interest and potentially global significance. Scientific validation was just the first step. Now, Michael's message was about to reach beyond the confines of research labs and medical journals. But how would the world react to a child prophet? The answer would surprise everyone, even Michael himself. As news of Dr. Hartley's findings spread, local media outlets caught wind of the extraordinary story unfolding in their backyard. At first, it was just a small article in the town newspaper, but soon regional TV stations were clamoring for interviews with the boy who had died and returned with a message for America. Michael's parents were initially hesitant to expose their son to the media spotlight. They worried about the potential backlash and the toll it might take on Michael's recovery. But as the requests piled up, they realized that keeping the story under wraps was no longer an option. The first television interview was a surreal experience for the Johnson family. Bright lights, makeup artists, and a barrage of questions about life, death, and the fate of a nation. It was a far cry from their quiet life before the accident. Michael, despite his young age, spoke with a conviction that left many viewers stunned. As the story gained traction, reactions within the community were mixed. Some neighbors rallied around the Johnsons, offering support and protection from the growing media circus. Others viewed the whole affair with skepticism, whispering about attention-seeking and delusions. Michael's school became a battleground of opinions, with some parents demanding he be removed from classes, while others defended his right to an education. For Michael, the sudden attention was overwhelming. He struggled to reconcile his profound spiritual experience with the mundane realities of everyday life. There were moments when he questioned whether sharing his vision was worth the scrutiny and doubt he now faced. Yet amidst the chaos, something remarkable began to happen. People from all walks of life started reaching out to Michael, sharing their own spiritual experiences and expressing how his story had touched them. Letters poured in from across the country, many recounting similar visions or feelings of a looming turning point for America. A group of local citizens, inspired by Michael's message, formed a grassroots organization dedicated to promoting spiritual awareness and national unity. They organized community events, inviting speakers from various faiths and backgrounds to discuss the importance of collective action in shaping America's future. As Michael's story spread, it began to impact people in unexpected ways. Some reported making significant life changes after hearing about his experience, reevaluating their priorities and seeking deeper meaning in their lives. Others felt compelled to become more engaged in their communities and political processes, recognizing the power of individual actions in shaping the nation's destiny. What had begun as one boy's extraordinary journey was rapidly evolving into a movement. People across the country were awakening to the idea that perhaps there was more to reality than what could be seen and measured. Michael's prophecy had sparked a conversation about America's spiritual and moral direction, one that was growing louder by the day. While Michael's story captivated the nation, a shadow of doubt crept in. Could there be a rational explanation for his otherworldly experience? The clash between believers and skeptics was about to reach a fever pitch, with America's future hanging in the balance. As news of Michael's prophecy spread, experts from various fields began to weigh in on its significance. Religious leaders and scholars pored over the details of his vision, seeking connections to their own sacred texts and traditions. Some saw parallels with biblical prophecies, while others drew comparisons to mystical experiences in other faiths. Historians found themselves in high demand, fielding questions about past predictions concerning America's destiny. They pointed to figures like Alexis de Tocqueville, who had foreseen America's rise to global prominence, and Native American prophecies that spoke of great changes coming to the land. The similarities between these historical predictions and Michael's vision sparked intense debate in academic circles. Political analysts grappled with the potential implications of the prophecy. Some saw it as a call for national unity and moral renewal, while others worried about its potential to be misused for political gain. The question of how such a prophecy might influence public policy and electoral outcomes became a hot topic on news programs and political podcasts. Skeptics, meanwhile, offered alternative explanations for Michael's experience. Neurologists suggested that his vision could be the result of complex brain activity during his near-death state. Psychologists proposed that the traumatic event might have triggered a powerful subconscious response, manifesting as a prophetic vision. As the analysis deepened, public opinion began to shift. Many who had initially dismissed Michael's story found themselves intrigued by the scholarly discourse surrounding it. The debate over whether to interpret the prophecy literally or symbolically raged on, with passionate arguments on both sides. Dr. Emily Roth, a renowned expert in comparative religion, offered her perspective. Throughout history, we've seen similar prophetic experiences across cultures. What's unique about Michael's case is the convergence of spiritual elements with specific predictions about a nation's future. It challenges us to consider the relationship between individual spiritual experiences and collective destiny. The impact of Michael's prophecy extended far beyond academic and religious circles. Ordinary citizens found themselves engaged in deep discussions about the nature of reality, the possibility of divine intervention, and America's role in the world. Coffee shops and online forums buzzed with speculation about what the future might hold. As the nation grappled with the implications of Michael's vision, a sense of anticipation grew. Whether viewed as a divine warning, a psychological phenomenon, or something in between, it was clear that his experience had touched a nerve in the American psyche. The coming months would reveal whether this prophetic message would fade into obscurity or spark a transformation that would shape the course of history. In the wake of Michael's prophecy, America found itself caught in a whirlwind of conflicting beliefs and heated debates. But as the dust settled, a startling pattern began to emerge. Could this divine warning be the catalyst for a transformation far more profound than anyone had anticipated? As Michael's story spread across the nation, it ignited a firestorm of discussion and controversy. What had begun as a local curiosity quickly evolved into a topic of national importance. Political leaders, initially hesitant to comment on such an unusual phenomenon, found themselves forced to address the growing public interest. Some embraced the prophecy as a call for national renewal, while others dismissed it as a distraction from more pressing issues. The impact on America's political and social climate was profound. Town halls and community meetings became battlegrounds of ideology, with citizens passionately debating the validity and implications of Michael's vision. The prophecy seemed to touch on deep-seated anxieties about the nation's future, bringing long-simmering tensions to the surface. Social media platforms became a hotbed of speculation and conspiracy theories. Hashtags related to Michael's prophecy trended for weeks on end, with users sharing their own interpretations and experiences. Some saw hidden meanings in every detail of Michael's account, while others worked tirelessly to debunk what they saw as an elaborate hoax. Religious communities across the country found themselves grappling with the implications of Michael's experience. Some saw it as a divine message that aligned perfectly with their own teachings, while others viewed it with skepticism or outright rejection. Interfaith dialogues sprang up in communities large and small as people sought to understand the prophecy through the lens of their own spiritual traditions. As the debate intensified, a clear divide began to form between those who believed in the authenticity of Michael's vision and those who doubted. This schism cut across traditional political and social lines, creating unlikely alliances and bitter rivalries. Families found themselves at odds, friendships were strained, and communities that had once been united now found themselves deeply divided. For Michael, the unintended consequences of his message were overwhelming. The young boy, who had simply wanted to share what he had experienced now, found himself at the center of a national controversy. He struggled with the weight of responsibility, knowing that his words were being scrutinized and debated by millions. The pressure to provide more details or to somehow prove the validity of his vision was constant and exhausting. As the nation grappled with the implications of the prophecy, it became clear that America stood at a crossroads. The choice between belief and skepticism was about more than just accepting or rejecting Michael's account. It spoke to fundamental questions about faith, science, and the nature of reality itself. The coming months would reveal whether this prophetic warning would unite the nation in a common purpose or drive it further apart. As the dust settled from the national uproar, Michael Johnson found himself grappling with the enormity of his newfound role. The young boy who had touched the veil between worlds now faced the daunting task of shepherding a nation towards an uncertain future. It was a responsibility that weighed heavily on his young shoulders, yet one he embraced with a determination that belied his years. In the weeks following his return, Michael's life underwent a profound transformation. Gone were the carefree days of bike rides and video games. Instead, he devoted himself to meditation and prayer, seeking to maintain the spiritual connection he had experienced beyond the veil. His parents watched with a mixture of awe and concern as their son's demeanor shifted, taking on a gravity and wisdom that seemed beyond his years. As Michael began to share the advice he had received about preparing for the future, he found an eager audience. People from all walks of life sought his guidance, drawn by the authenticity of his experience and the urgency of his message. He spoke of the importance of compassion, of bridging divides, and of recognizing the interconnectedness of all things. These weren't just lofty ideals. Michael emphasized practical steps, urging people to strengthen their communities, to become more self-sufficient, and to cultivate spiritual awareness. Grassroots groups inspired by Michael's prophecy began to form across the country. These organizations took various forms. Some focused on community service, others on spiritual development, and still others on promoting national unity. Michael lent his support to these efforts, seeing in them the seeds of the transformation he had been tasked with inspiring. Yet for every person who embraced Michael's message, there were those who met it with skepticism or outright hostility. He faced accusations of being a fraud, a pawn in some elaborate hoax, or a misguided child led astray by his own imagination. Death threats arrived alongside letters of support, and Michael found himself navigating a minefield of public opinion. The personal toll of his mission was considerable. Michael struggled with the loss of his normal childhood, with the constant scrutiny of the public eye, and with the enormous expectations placed upon him. There were nights when he lay awake, doubting himself and the reality of his experience. But in those dark moments, he would recall the overwhelming love and purpose he had felt in the presence of the divine messenger, and his resolve would strengthen anew. Despite the challenges, Michael's commitment to his divine purpose never wavered. He recognized that the future he had glimpsed was not set in stone. It was a possibility, one that could be shaped by the collective will and actions of humanity. And so he continued to speak, to inspire and to unite, driven by the knowledge that the fate of a nation might hinge on his ability to convey the urgency of his message. As the months passed, subtle signs began to emerge that hinted at the unfolding of Michael's prophecy. Weather patterns shifted in unexpected ways, mirroring the environmental changes he had foreseen. Political tensions rose both domestically and internationally, echoing the warnings of potential conflict. Those who had embraced Michael's message watched these developments with a mixture of apprehension and validation, sensing that the nation indeed stood on the brink of significant change. Across America, communities of believers grew in number and conviction. They established networks of support, sharing resources and knowledge in preparation for the challenges Michael had foretold. Some groups focused on sustainable living practices, while others dedicated themselves to spiritual growth and unity. The movement, once dismissed as fringe, was gaining momentum and attracting attention from mainstream society. Skeptics, however, remained steadfast in their search for rational explanations. They pointed to historical patterns and social trends to account for the apparent fulfillment of Michael's vision. Scientists and researchers continued to study near-death experiences, seeking physiological or psychological explanations for the profound insights reported by those who had crossed the threshold of death and returned. As events unfolded, Michael's role evolved from that of a messenger to a reluctant leader. Now a teenager, he found himself called upon to interpret the signs and guide those who looked to him for direction. The weight of this responsibility was evident in his demeanor, which had matured beyond his years. Yet he approached his task with a quiet determination, drawing strength from the unwavering certainty of his experience. The nation held its collective breath, poised between hope and fear. News outlets provided constant updates on potential signs of the prophecy's fulfillment, while social media buzzed with speculation and debate. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, as if the very air itself was alive with the potential for transformation. Through it all, Michael's beliefs about death and the afterlife remained a source of comfort and inspiration. He spoke of death not as an end, but as a transition to a realm of profound love and understanding. His descriptions of the afterlife painted a picture of unity and purpose that transcended earthly divisions. These insights offered solace to many, providing a broader perspective on life's challenges and uncertainties. Despite the tension and uncertainty gripping the nation, a sense of hope began to emerge. People from diverse backgrounds found common ground in their desire for positive change. Acts of kindness and community service increased, as if in defiance of the potential turmoil that lay ahead. There was a growing recognition that the future, while uncertain, held the potential for renewal and growth. As America stood at the precipice of potential transformation, the impact of Michael's prophecy extended far beyond its borders. The world watched, wondering if this young boy's vision would indeed shape the destiny of a nation, and perhaps the course of human history itself. Michael's extraordinary journey from the brink of death to becoming a messenger of divine prophecy has left an indelible mark on America. His vision challenged our understanding of life, death, and the very fabric of reality itself. The ripple effects of his experience touched countless lives, sparking a national conversation about spirituality, purpose, and our collective future. As we reflect on Michael's story, we're reminded of the profound impact one individual can have on the world. His courage in sharing his message, despite skepticism and ridicule, serves as a testament to the power of conviction. It forces us to consider our own roles in shaping America's destiny. Are we merely passive observers or active participants in crafting our nation's future? Michael's prophecy invites us to look beyond our daily concerns and consider the bigger picture. It challenges us to examine our values, our relationships, and our place in the grand tapestry of existence. Whether we fully believe in Michael's vision or not, its impact on our national consciousness is undeniable. As America stands at this crossroads, each of us faces a choice. Will we embrace the possibility of transformation or cling to the familiar? The future Michael glimpsed is not predetermined. It's a potential reality that we, as individuals and as a nation, have the power to shape. What role will you play in writing the next chapter of America's story?